Good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for the few minutes delay there on starting, but thank you for holding out and waiting for us. I hope you're okay. Welcome to this webinar with the College of Legal Practice. As you can see in front of you, we are today discussing the SQE, but specifically to undergraduate students. Firstly, before we crack on, it's always nice to have some introductions. Here with you today is myself. I'm Matt Shepherd. I am the Student Recruitment Manager here at the college. And we also have Giles with us. Giles, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Giles Proctor. I'm the grandly named CEO of the college, but I'm here today to talk about the experience of the undergraduate going into SQE, what sort of things you need to think about and what you need to look at.
Amazing. Thank you, Giles. I'm going to start us today just with a little bit of a brief overview of what we're going to cover and who the college are. So as you can see in front of you, there's quite a bit that we're going to cover today. So hopefully, we really hope you'll be able to leave today and be able to make more concise decisions when it comes to looking at the SQE, looking at also we're going to cover the LPC, so being able to make informed decisions on both. So we're going to look at who we are as a college and what we offer and how we support students. We're going to look at the SQE routes to qualification, and we're also going to look at the assessment specifically with a quick eye on SQE1, and we're going to have a nice overview of QWE, so qualifying work experience. As an undergraduate student, what should you be thinking about? We will then compare the SQE and the LPC. What opportunities does the SQE hold for you as an undergraduate student, and how is that different to the LPC? Giles is fantastic and works with lots of firms across the country, so he's going to give some insight into what a firm's saying at the moment and what's that transition looking like to the SQE. We'll look at our preparation courses just briefly. And we'll also look at what opportunities we also offer at the college, and then any time for questions at the end. So as we head straight into it, it's always great to start with who we are. So like I said, we are the College of Legal Practice. We are a fully accredited virtual postgraduate law school. So everything we do is virtual and online. We are a college that sits part of the College of Law, with the parent company based in Australia. What's very key about that is we are not-for-profit group. So our parent company are a not-for-profit company. So our ethos is very much around not-for-profit activity, which separates us quite distinctly from some of our competitors. And we specialise in SQE preparation. We were born when the SQE came through, and that's what we exist for. We have a very clear ethos in what we want to achieve as a college. Firstly, the first 2 points being accessible and affordable and facilitating increased access to the profession. So you will notice as we go through, we talk a lot about how people can get into the profession. What we look to do is open up opportunities for more people, and people who might not under the old route to qualification have had the opportunity to get into becoming a solicitor in England and Wales. That's a very big part of what we do and what we aim to achieve, is getting more people into the profession. Through our learning structure, and we aim to develop each individual's unique potential. So making sure that you get the most out of your course and you can achieve what you want to achieve now and in future when you study with us. And we offer personalised and targeted individual support through supervision and personal tutors. And lastly, we still follow a collegiate approach, even though we are virtual. So you have regular contact with supervisors in town halls, in surgeries, in those one-to-one supervisor sessions, as well as contact time with other students. So we offer that collegiate feel that you would get, well, not the same, but what you would feel when you're on a campus. So I hope that gives you a nice brief overview of who we are as a college, and I'm going to make my face disappear for a while and hand over to Giles, and he's going to go into the SQE.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. So what I'm going to do, as Matt highlighted, first of all, is to give you a general background very quickly to, well, what is the SQE asking of you and what's it part of in terms of qualifying as a solicitor? And then I'm going to go on and talk a little bit about the SQE in detail, so you just understand the basics of what it looks like and what you have to do to go through it. I'll also talk about, as Matt said, qualifying work experience, because a lot of students are coming to us and saying, well, I understand a little bit about these exams, but what about the qualifying work experience piece? How does that differ, for example, from what's required under a current LPC in terms of training contract? And I'll try and give you a flavour also, as Matt said, of what firms are really thinking about, and also what you as an undergraduate student can be thinking about at the various stages about your career. So wider than just looking at SQE, but how you actually make yourself a good choice for a firm or organisation that you want to work for. just a bit of background to myself. Besides working for Kaplan Law School, and part of the team that designed the SQE, I also ran an undergraduate law school at Roehampton University for 5 years. So we worked very much in that mindset of creating and preparing our students for practice. So again, I'll give you some tips about what I see about making that transition into practice. So the SQE really has 4 elements to it. And this is a diagram that basically the SRA, the regulator, have produced to guide us and help us understand what 4 elements make up qualifying as a solicitor. So the first one, if we start at the top left, is what you're doing at the moment, is getting a degree. And whether you're a non-law student getting a non-law degree, or more likely on this call, a law student, you will have your degree. Once you get your degree, that's one of the 4 elements you need to qualify as a solicitor. The second one, if we move around from left to right, is these SQE1 and SQE2 exams. They are separate exams from each other. In a moment, I'm going to explain what they look like, how you approach them, and even give you a little flavour of one of the questions that you might see in the SQE1 exam. I suppose the only thing to remember now is that you've got time to take both these exams. You don't have to take them together. You've got up to 6 years once you start SQE1 to take SQE2. You must pass SQE1 before you get to SQE2. But what that looks like, as I say, I'll explain a little bit more for you. The third element, working our way around the jigsaw, is the suitability requirements. These are things asked of you when you seek to qualify with the SRA. At the moment of qualification, they'll ask you to make sure you don't have a criminal record or have done anything that would apply you effectively from being a solicitor admitted in England and Wales. And 99% of the people who get to qualification are fine with this test. It's nothing out of the ordinary. The fourth element, however, qualified work experience, is that idea that you should have some experience of work in legal practice. And that is 2 years. And it mirrors really the existing training contract requirement, but it's a bit more flexible. And again, I'll explain that when we come on to it. So that's the 4 elements that you're seeking to satisfy should you wish to become a qualified solicitor. Let's just move on and have a little look at that element I highlighted, the exams. Now, as we said, there are 2 of them. And let's just decode the language here and the jargon they use. That function legal knowledge for SQE1. SQE1 is basically examining you on legal knowledge. And there are 13 areas, a lot of which you've covered on your law degree or if you've done one a conversion course, but some new areas as well that you would normally cover at the moment on the LPC. And those are more the sort of procedural areas of criminal law, civil litigation, property law, and business. And that's the practical stuff, how do you form a company, how do you sell a house, etc. So all that is subject matter of the knowledge. And that's examined by Kaplan. So when you decide to do your SQE exams, you'll actually effectively sign up with Kaplan to do the exams. You'll pay them a fee as and when you're ready. And that SQE1 exam is held twice a year. So what you'll see across the piece is that providers will provide preparation courses, which effectively run up to the SQE examinations. And we've given you there what the exam fee is. Now, I suppose one point to note is that that exam fee is separate from any fee you might pay for a course to prepare you to a provider such as ourselves. The other thing to note, and we'll come on to this in a moment, is that the standard assessment for SQE1 is multiple choice questions. I'm going to show you one so you can see what they look like. Effectively 360 of them. You do them over 2 papers, and we'll explain how you approach them and how different they are, I suppose, from what you might have seen in an assessment in your undergraduate degree. Before we go on and look at SQE1 in more detail and the questions, let's just think about SQE2. Once you've passed SQE1, you can take SQE2. And that's a mixture of skills, and it tests 6 skills, oral and written skills. So written skills such as writing, drafting, research, and matter analysis, being able to analyze a case and give some sensible answers when asked. And then some oral, so presentation, effectively presenting, and in terms of advocacy, and also interviewing, being able to interview a client. So those are assessed alongside understanding 5 areas of legal practice, those practice areas. So you can effectively, in most of those skills, be assessed in any of those 5 practice areas. So when you're doing SQE2, you're both practicing the skill and you're also thinking back to the knowledge you gained on SQE1 and using that as your foundation to do the skill. Now, SQE2 is a little more flexible than SQE1. So you can present yourself for examination 4 times a year. And that's likely to be the pattern going forward, so the SRA tell us. Like SQE1, SQE2 has a separate exam fee, which you pay every time you take the exam. And you'll notice at the bottom of the slide, we've got that little line of qualifying work experience. And what that means is you can actually do your qualifying work experience while you're taking the examinations. You can do it before. You can get your 2 years after you've taken the examination. So it's very flexible as to when you can get qualifying work experience. But often when students come to us, they're asking both about, well, what's SQE about, but also what's this thing called qualifying work experience? And I'm going to go on and talk about that in a couple of minutes. So first of all, before we leave SQE, let's have a little look at an example of an SQE1 MCQ, multiple choice question for short. And there's Dan, one of our recent students who'd taken the SQE1. And I think the key that we're always saying to students coming from the undergraduate degree is you have a lot of the knowledge already to address these questions. So the 13 areas under SQE1, all of which are examined by this style of multiple choice question, are all about legal principle. So what the SRA and Kaplan are asking you to do is effectively look at these questions from the point of view of applying a legal principle. So let's have a quick read of the question. This is a contract law question, and many of you will have spotted it's that old question about invitation to treat or offers and which is which. Now, therefore, what you're looking at with this question, before we look at the answer, what you're looking at is this question. So read the scenario and think, well, what's actually happening here? What's the process taking place? Identifying the key facts. And then you're given 5 options. Now, the style is called best possible answer because all these options are credible options. But given the facts you've analysed, one of them is the correct answer. Now, before we look at that correct answer, I'm sure you guys are hot on contracts, you'll get the right answer, is notice there is no reference to cases. You don't need to know the names of cases. Notice there is no reference to statutory references. There's no need to refer to statutory referencing. What you do need to know is the legal principle. Now, some students are saying to us, actually, that makes it slightly easier. Rather than learning those long list of cases, which many of you may still have in your heads, if you're in second or third year or even first year, you'll be learning those cases still. Actually, what you will actually need to remember for SQE is the legal principle. And some students said, actually, that makes it a bit easier. I don't have to try and juggle all those different cases. I just remember legal principle. And that's actually how we've approached this. I'll explain a bit later. As a provider preparing you for these exams, we go straight to the heart of it, which is understand the legal principle rather than clutter yourself up with cases. So if we move on a slide, you'll see the magic of the answer revealed, and it's highlighted in yellow. And the answer is, in fact, of course, as you already know, E. And that's all about something being an invitation to treat, not an offer capable of acceptance. Now, the interesting thing about that slide is that you would have to do in one paper 1, 180 of those questions, and you probably have about 1 minute 40 seconds. Now, that doesn't sound very much, but what you find on a preparation course is a lot of the knowledge you already have, the new knowledge you'll be presented with, and what we will do, and I'm sure other providers will do the same, is walk you through what the key concepts and principles are, and then allow you to practice before you come on to a multiple choice question where you then apply the principles. So what we've heard from students is they very quickly get into this idea of both having the legal principle to hand, but also having the technique to very quickly work through those options, choose the correct one and move on. So it's a matter of training and understanding the technique behind the questions as much as having that residual knowledge that you'll have from your degree or from your studies on the new subjects with your provider. So those multiple choice questions look quite different, I suspect, from what you've seen before, but actually are very accessible and copable. And we find in our courses that after 3 or 4 weeks, students are really starting to rattle through in terms of the technique and pace they need to have, as well as understanding legal principles and various practice areas you're examined on. So moving on from looking at the MCQ, let's just talk a little bit about that other element I mentioned at the beginning, which is qualifying work experience. Now, there are 3 things here, I think, to understand when you're looking at this requirement for getting 2 years of this qualifying work experience. First of all, what is it? How do you identify it? Well, What the SRA have is a statement of solicitor competence, and it lists all the competencies they want you to have to become a day one qualified solicitor. And that's a great list to have, because it means that what you're effectively looking for qualified work experience is meeting one or more of these competencies. Now, what we'll do is we'll pop in the chat a link directly to those competencies. You can see what they say, and all around the practice of being a solicitor. And effectively, the work experience you want to get is that experience that meets those competencies, one or more of them. Now, the most common way you do that is to get a job with an organization where you're actually doing legal work. You're doing, and Alex, if you think about legal work, think about those tasks on the right-hand side of the screen that we've identified for you. Are you looking at contracts? Are you doing some form of legal research? Are you writing something to a client or preparing something to be written for a client? Are you analyzing legal data on matters and files? There's all sorts of different tasks that effectively would meet those competencies and qualify. And I suppose that brings me to my second point, which is the first thing is you can undertake this in up to 4 employments. So it might be that you stay with one firm and do that 2 years. It might be that you decide to start with a firm as a paralegal and do 6 months of the work, and then actually you move on to another firm. Well, the new regulations allow you to do that, allow you to go up to 4 employers or organizations to effectively gain your qualified work experience. And a little note of caution on that in a moment. But the final thing is, well, how can I actually make sure that qualifying work experience is registered? Well, it has to be signed off. And it has to be signed off by a solicitor who's already qualified. And they have to sign off that you've actually done the time, you've done the amount of qualifying work experience that they've seen you, they've supervised you, or they've had knowledge of the work you've done. And they are signing off that you've done the work. They're not signing off the quality of the work. They're simply signing off you've done the work. And we'll also put in the chat for you a link to the SRA's own effectively recording, basically the document you can record your qualifying work experience on. And that document produced by the SA has all those competencies in, and you simply would record what work you're doing and list it against one or more of those competencies. That's your record, and that's how you would record it. Now, as I say, the most common way you would do that is work for an organization that will actually agree to supervise you and to sign off the fact you're doing this work. And if you look at the box under organizations on the top right of the slide, yes, law firms are the most regular and normal place to get those. But there are other areas now where if you're in, for example, an in-house organization where you're doing legal work and you're being supervised, that can be signed off for you. If you're working for a voluntary sector organization, such as a local law clinic or the Citizens Advice Bureau, you may find someone there who supervises you and you're doing relevant work there that can be signed off. So finally, if you see the roles, therefore, the role is no longer just one of, trainee lawyer that gets you those credits. You can actually be doing voluntary work, internship, paralegal, legal assistant, even as you're going into your first step into practice. If you're doing one of those roles, that may well qualify as qualifying work experience if you're doing work that meets the competencies. So we have a clear idea, don't we, that we've got this qualifying work experience, which is meeting one or more of these competencies. We know that we have to do it for 2 years, and we know we have to record it. And the SRA have produced a recording mechanism for us. And it has to be signed off by a solicitor. Those are really the fundamental issues. I suppose 2 things from experience from working with undergraduate students. First of all, you may be at the stage in your career where actually you just want to get some work experience working in a legal environment. And whether that's actually sitting and observing a legal professional in action, whether that's, for example, going to court and observing what happens in court, whether it's simply going to talk at law fairs to legal practitioners, getting an idea of what they do. Now, that is obviously not qualified work experience, but it is great experience to get. So I think what we're talking to undergraduates about is making sure you don't conflate the two. Getting work experience is really, really useful to have on your CV. It gives you a steer as to whether you want to have a legal career and what type of legal career. Qualifying work experience is the formal experience you're getting when doing legal work. And that most often will be when you're working in a firm, either as a paralegal or on some form of training scheme. Now, the final thing about qualifying work experience is just coming back to remind you about that flexibility. that you might decide in your career to work a little bit first before doing the exams. That's absolutely fine. And that's when you can start to get qualifying work experience when you're being supervised. You might work for quite a while. And then, and only then, might you approach a firm and they might say, well, you've got this qualifying work experience. We will train you through the SQE and we'll qualify you. Be careful, though, because some firms may look and say, you've got qualifying work experience, which makes you really employable, but actually we want to work for the 2 years with us to learn about our firm and our culture and our type of work. So if you're going to obtain qualifying work experience, always ask and make sure when you're applying for a job that that's the sort of qualifying work experience that their firm will accept. So it's really, really a useful and flexible system, but it's really for you to shape how and when you want to get the qualifying work experience. And as I say, the most common route is to apply to a firm, and they will both give you the qualifying work experience, and also they may agree to pay you your exam fees and even a maintenance grant in some cases to do the SQE. So it's that route hasn't gone. It's just as much more flexibility about how you can get this qualifying work experience and on what path you choose to take. Okay, so that's a little summary of qualifying work experience. Let's move on now and just talk a little bit about careers. So you're working for your subject or subjects in your undergraduate degree. You are a law student, or you might even be a non-law student. I was a non-law student who then thinks about converting to law. Now, let's talk about if you're a law student first, because this careers focus is written very much with that in mind, but there's a lot of commonality between the sort of things you might do here and the sort of things you might choose to do as a non-lawyer coming into law. So the key thing, I think, in law careers when you're an undergraduate is to think about, well, is this something I'm interested in? And there's little point in feeling pressure from family or friends to be a solicitor or some form of legal professional because it's a great thing to do. It's got status. I think you've really got to test yourself to see, is this interesting for me? Does it actually meet my interests? Now, if it does, you can start to explore in first year careers events, even though you might think, well, I'm not going to start to do anything about this for a couple of years. If you are in your first year and you're able to just dip your toe in the water, go to some careers events, that's a great idea to give you a sense of what the legal profession's like. You also start to think about, well, if I'm going to go into this profession, or any profession really, I need to develop my curriculum vitae, my CV. So what is my record of what have I done? What makes me who I am? What's my story? And that's why we say in the first year, you may or may not want to get any legally facing work, but having some experience, whether it's in retail or sales or marketing or whatever it is, customer facing tends to be quite attractive to firms who eventually, organizations who will employ you, because they're looking for you to be able to do that customer facing role, which all lawyers have to do. That was talking to clients. So having that sort of experience is really, really helpful, even if you're in the first year of your law degree. Now, if you do decide that law is for you, then the second year is really when you get the chance to start thinking, well, what sort of role, what sort of area of law do I like? And also, you've had your first year exam results. You'll probably have a little bit of preference as to what areas of law you're strong in, other areas of law which you might want to work a little bit at, or you wouldn't touch with a barge pole ever again. And I think second year is really that year where you can start to look at law firms and see if you get a little bit of work experience. And as we know, there are formal placements, but there are also room for going around local firms in your area and actually just finding some work where you can just observe what people do. Unfortunately, probably not paid work, but it really is good to build your experience. To give my example, I actually went to observe a barrister for a week, unpaid, just to see what the life was like. I decided after that week I would never be a barrister. And that was useful for me to be able to at least rule things out. And I'm still interested in the law, but the bar wasn't for me. I think also what you can do is if you're looking for placements and schemes, you have to be quite resilient because there is some competition for that. So you are actually building that skill of resilience, that skill of starting to learn how to put together, for example, a letter of application, how to put together an assessment, how to approach an assessment centre. All these things you can work on. And therefore, I would really tag into your career service at your university in your second year, and especially also carrying that link on into your third year to allow them to give you the help that they can that's useful for you. Now, so you've made that decision that you're thinking about law. And I think the key thing then is to think about, well, what skills have I got that I'm developing in my degree? Well, I'm developing the ability to work in teams if you're doing group work. I'm developing the work to be a self-starter, to actually work independently. That's something that firms ask a lot about. They ask about teamwork, ask about operating independently, what's your ability to study. And remember, you've also got in your work from second year into third year, or going into what we call level 6, the final year of a law degree. And you've got, at level 6, you're showing that ability to have critical thinking skills and analysis and work through problems, and also to communicate. These are all great skills that law firms or organizations you might apply to for a role would really ask you about. So start to make a little mental list of all those skills that you're acquiring through your work, through your study. Also, if you have any activities that you're doing outside your study, whether they be groups, societies, working, or other things that you're doing outside your studies, those can be really relevant to building the person you are. So do reflect them in your CVs or in your statements, or otherwise start to building those things and use media. So we always recommended at Roehampton that a LinkedIn account is very, very helpful to build your profile and start to get you into that area where professionals network. And networking is no mystery. Network is about having a genuine interest in certain areas and starting to build those relationships and contacts. Now, a great way to do that, again, is the Law Society at the uni, because actually what that gives you is a chance to meet legal professionals, but also start to learn a bit about your peers from across your year group as well. Now, on that third, we've also said, find a mentor. That doesn't need to be a formal relationship. Just someone maybe in the profession who you can just have a chat with, or go and have a coffee with, or just talk through, I'm thinking of looking at this sort of work. What do you think? So a mentor doesn't have to be a very sort of heavy arrangement. It can be a person or people who you actually meet and chat to about a particular role in the law or particular approach to the law. So that building of legal experience, looking at application for roles, but also enjoying your third year and making sure you come out with a degree and that you're proud of yourself in terms of what you've done. So it's a balance, isn't it? Making sure that you've also looked at the third year as a good stepping stone to a good degree. Now, the final thing I'd say about third year is you may decide to choose electives if your university runs options in the third year, which most do. If you do that, you might choose them with an eye to your future career because you've done a bit of work and you think that actually these areas of law are for you. If that's right, that's a really good thing to do. That's a really good focus because it shows if you're going to talk to a future employer that you've actually decided these areas are good for you. But do not be dispirited if you've done third year options and then actually when you're in the workplace, you end up doing something completely different. Remember, it's about your skills as much as the legal knowledge you acquire in those topics that will put you in good stead for applying for places. So that's a little bit of the careers focus for law students. If I'm a non-law grad, and I'll put myself in this position because of where I was, obviously I didn't do anything in my first or second year to think about legal careers. I was fixed on other things, not law. However, what I finally did when I was in my conversion year on what used to be the GDL is I did a lot of those things that you can see in that third year box. I started to look at building a legal network through the Law Society I joined, where I did my conversion course, which was Manchester Metropolitan University, or Manchester Polytechnic as it was then. I actually started to think about the skills I got from my non-law degree, which was history, and that ability to analyse text, that ability to explain and communicate. I had a mentor of sorts because I went to various little placements and had to shadow people and ask them for advice. And I started to try and find a role that prepared me for going into what was then a training contract. And I didn't have to consider the SQE. I had to consider the LPC, actually, the Law Society finals, which before LPC makes me very old. But the key things remain. I think if you're going to think about the SQE, then your final year of your degree is a good time to ask about it and to come on webinars such as this to find out more. So that's just a little bit on the careers focus. Then if we move on and think about a little bit this question that if you're a second or third year in degree, you will be asking yourself about, well, what about the SQE versus the LPC? And I think it's very much a matter of how much flexibility you want to build in. What do you see as your journey? Because if you look at the SQE route as opposed to the LPC route, it's open to any undergraduate degree. Now, most, if not all of everyone watching this webinar will have a law degree. So in a way, that's maybe not a choice you need to worry about or make. The work experience piece is, because actually, once you've done your LPC, to qualify, you need to get your 2 years of recognised training, a training contract, as it's called in old money. Now, those are starting to disappear simply because there's a smaller cohort of people who are eligible to do the LPC and then go on to get training contracts. So you need to ask around and see where those opportunities are in the firms or areas that you wish to go for. Otherwise, as I've explained, those training contracts are being replaced by this ability to get 2 years of qualifying work experience. Now, the delivery of the study part, the vocational part, the LPC, is normally done on a full-time 1 year basis on campus. There are some online LPCs, but they're few and far between. It's more common in the SQE area to find providers such as ourselves who are offering virtual or blended learning, and you'll see the providers across the spectrum providing a whole range of study opportunities and modes. And again, it's what fits with your approach. It's what fits with your way you want to balance your work and your life. In terms of curriculum, they are different, but they're not. If you see what I mean, you're still going to have to cover in one or the other the practice areas. You're still going to have to, in both courses, cover some sort of skills. The difficulty really is in the way they're assessed. We've already talked about the use of multiple choice assessment in SQE1. In SQE2, it's very much online assessment in terms of your writing skills, but also oral face-to-face assessment in terms of your 2 oral skills. On the LPC, again, it's a lot of exams after each module and also some face-to-face oral assessment for things like advocacy and for interview. So again, different pace of assessment in terms of SQE2 and LPC. SQE1, I think, is the big difference, that multiple choice style that we talked about. I think the big differential here also is cost. You should not, for an SQE preparation course, given you're paying for a national exam, have to pay the sort of prices that you were previously paying for a full-time 1 year on-campus course. And that's, again, just a matter of economics as a law school provider in terms of providing different value entry points for students. So we would always say, look at everything in the round, look at the quality, look at the learning mode you're going to get, but also think about, how do I pay my way through this? Or is an employer going to very kindly help me take the financial cost of working through this? And I suppose one more thing I'd highlight, which Matt will talk about a little bit later, is there are masters available. We are a higher education provider. We've got degree awarding powers. So we would offer a master's. And some students are looking to them thinking, well, actually, I get a master's loan for £11,000, which covers my SQE preparation courses, fees. It also covers my fees to Kaplan for the exams themselves. And it also gives me a master's. So it actually covers electives in 3 areas, which give me a technical understanding of areas of law I might be interested in, and also gives me a business project where I can get those sort of level 7 master's skills of analysis and critical thinking and demonstrate those to a future employer. So I think Matt, as I say, will pick up a little bit more on that master's route when we get there. So I think the SQE versus LPC discussion is a live one. I'm very happy to take questions afterwards on any aspects I've not covered, but there is a clear choice there. It's very much down to your learning preferences and also what speed you want to qualify at. Because the LPC, as I say, has fixed time. It's LPC 1 year or 2 years part-time, and then a 2-year training contract, whereas it's noticeably quicker in terms of qualifying through the SQE1, SQE2 route, plus QWE, but also for that route, you've got to take cognizance and do the national exams at dates when they're set. So I hope that's helpful. Very happy to answer any more questions on that as we get to it. But moving on then, I suppose what I'd highlight for you is this new regime and how it might help you in terms of making a decision as to how you qualify. And I suppose in terms of how it might help you, it's because it enables you to proceed at the pace you want to proceed at. So you can take it step by step. You can take SQE 1, pause for a couple of years and do SQE 2. You might want to do them straight together, which many are choosing to do, but you might actually want to do some work experience first, just to check that law's for you. And remember, you can get your qualified work experience before you do the exams, while you're doing it, what we call earn while you learn, and also afterwards. You'll find that if you want a paralegal position, firms are starting to ask for SQE 1 as a sort of minimum requirement. Because what that means is you've got the practice area knowledge that they then can get you to use in that paralegal position. We talked about the flexibility of the qualifying work experience. That's obviously under the new route. And if you are unsure about your legal career, you can try out working as a paralegal to see if it's for you. We know that many of those who come out of undergraduate law degree, when they get to practice, some decide it's not for them. Some decide my choice was the different one. I did 2 jobs before I became a lawyer. And then I went to work in the law office for 3 weeks unpaid in Preston, where I'm from. And I absolutely loved it because every day was different. For me, doing the work experience piece convinced me I wanted to go and do the exams, which in those days were the GDL conversion course and the LPC. So I think there's real value if you're a little bit unsure in doing a little bit of practice work first, just to see whether it's something that really gets you excited and makes you interested in doing more. I suppose with the SQE as well, as we've highlighted, hopefully there are lots of training formats, full-time, part-time, virtual, campus-based, and you can choose also funding options that might help you through in terms of a master's loan. And what we're noting, and I'll deal with this in a moment, is how firms are starting to react to the SQE and the different routes they're giving you to go through. And if I may, if we move on, Matt, to the next slide, I'll just give you a sort of a quick hint of what we're hearing in the marketplace. We're working with these 3 firms, and they're all quite different. What Acuity are looking at is getting people on individual pathways. They could be trainee solicitor pathways, more like the existing regime, but also paralegal pathways. And they're designing pathways, particularly to take you into the firm, get some work experience, and then actually do the SQE at a time that suits you and suits them. So that's a really supported pathway through, but with some work in the firm first. Reed Smith, we work with Reed Smith in terms of providing electives. So what they've decided to do is to train their young lawyers before they come into the firm in both the SQE, but also in electives and skills modules that will help them become much better and more rounded lawyers, ready to hit the ground running when they come into the firm. Clark Wilmot, who work with us, they have paralegals who join the firm and then have a route through to SQE 1, SQE 2 while gaining the qualifying work experience. And again, these firms are using this change of regime to look at undergraduates and say, this is a route we'd like to take you in. We'd like to train you in the culture and values of the firm. We'd also like to pay your way through and qualify you with the firm. That's good for them because it means that you want to stay with them because you get a good experience. It's good for you because these firms can offer you structured training paths with the new qualification, which are quite flexible. So I suppose that's behind my remarks at the top, which it's really looking now from the inquiries we're getting from firms that the SQE is something all firms are going to be moving to because the LPC effectively will disappear since the SQE came in 2021. Gradually, those who can do the LPC, the numbers are shrinking. So firms look at SQE pathways. What they're also saying to us is that we like people coming to us and getting some experience with us before we put them through SQE. So don't rule out the fact that you may go to a firm who say, start with us, start working for 6 months, and then we'll start studying for SQE 1 or SQE 2. And you might do that full-time by study release, or you might do it part-time while you're working. So that idea of being able to earn some money while you're actually learning is quite an attractive one. And also that experience, when you take that work experience to them, they see that in itself as very valuable. So if you've been an intern, for example, if you manage to get some work experience in a law clinic or the voluntary sector, that's attractive as an initial, helping them make that initial recruitment decision to take you on. Also, that point I made beforehand, which is they're having some students coming to them saying, well, I've already done this work experience. Can it count as qualified work experience? Now, in some cases it can. But remember, firms will often say, we are a firm who focus on these particular areas of law, and therefore we'd like to train you really well in those areas of law and in the way we approach that law. So remember, when you talk to firms, one of the things they might say to you is actually, you'll do your 2 years training with us. We know you've got some work experience, but actually we really want you to train with us. Don't be disappointed if that's the case, because actually what that means is they're committed to training you really well. And I suppose the other thing firms are saying is they're still looking for those traditional virtues that they look when they're recruited from the LPC or for the LPC and recruited way back when I was doing my Law Society finals. They're looking for your character and abilities. They're looking for you to demonstrate the fact you can show some resilience. They're looking for you to be able to manage yourself, to be an independent learner, to also be able to exhibit those displays of teamwork and communication skills. So it's those common transferable skills they're looking for. And they're also looking for you to show those while you're studying. Because as you've seen from looking at the SQE1 and SQE2, those are exams with a syllabus that you need to master and skills that you need to exhibit. And therefore, there we're looking very carefully as a part of you. How are you going to cope with SQE? How are you going to understand what's needed to keep on track for SQE? So I hope that's helpful. Just give you a sense of what firms are thinking about now that the move to SQE is thoroughly underway. Matt, if you'd like to move on to the next slide. I think this is where, Matt, you can step in and talk about the courses to our colleagues.
Indeed. Giles, thank you for that. That was some fantastic in-depth insight information and a lot of thought-provoking. So what we'll do once we get through my slides, I might bring you back in and just have a quick chat with you. Delve into
absolutely fine. Thank you,
those thoughts a little bit more.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Giles. So as Giles has said, I'm going to quickly go over a little bit more us again as a college and to start with our courses. So we've touched upon, and Giles touched upon them as we went through, looking at the different options available. He has spoken from both a law grad and a non-law grad point of view, and hopefully the courses we offer here will support all students to getting on that pathway towards the SQE. So what we'll start with is the very, very beginning of a journey for somebody who might not be a law graduate. So we have what we call a graduate foundation in law. Under the old LPC route, or the pre-existing LPC route, shall I say, you had to complete a GDL if you were a non-law graduate. Now on the SQE, you don't need to have a law program to qualify as a solicitor. However, we still strongly recommend that you complete a program of study to get you up to scratch, to cover those 6 foundation areas of law, as there's a lot of law to cover, and especially with the SQE, with the 13 practice areas you need to study and pass. So we have what we call a graduate foundation in law. We offer this on a full-time or part-time basis. 20 weeks or 40 weeks, so you can have this done in less than a year, which is fantastic. The credits are equivalent to level 6, so there's no award at the end of this foundation program. You don't get a certificate. It's not a full diploma itself, but it is what we see nearly as the equivalent of. And the fees for this is £3,250. Again, all delivered online with us. What you'll have in this program, you'll have weekly workshops with subject matter experts where you have the opportunity to discuss the area of law that you're currently studying, ask questions, get really in depth with somebody who's practicing in that area at the time of your study. So it really helps support your study and your knowledge development. Once you've completed the graduate foundation law, or if you are a law graduate, you then kind of have 2 options with us if you want to complete the SQE. So we have 2 standalone preparation courses, or we have a full LLM, and I'll go on to the LLM in a minute. But our SQE1 preparation course, we offer on a full-time or 2 separate part-time bases. So we have a 13-week full-time, and we have a 20-week and a 40-week program. The 13-week program is our full-time equivalent, and that is full-time study. So you'd be looking at up to 35 hours, maybe even 40 if you want extra consolidation time, hours per week. Obviously, as an undergraduate student, I've been one myself, and you are classed as full-time, but sometimes your contact hours are relatively low, especially when you get to your final year, when you're doing a dissertation or a large study project. But we do say it's up to 35, maybe 40 hours studies. There's a lot of content to get through. The 20 hours, you'd be looking at more 20 hours or so a week. with then the 40-week program, maybe looking to 8 to 10 hours of study a week. And we're really pleased that we can offer these types of flexibilities across our courses, as it really supports people who maybe, if you are, as yourselves, as undergraduate students, just graduating from university, you can get straight in and carry on your full-time study. Or if you want to get some QWE and you want to do some work alongside, you're able to do that and study as you learn. So there's real flexibility. Our course fees for our SQE1 preparation program are £1,800. And then we have our SQE2 preparation course, and we offer that over a 10, 20 or 40 week as well. So very similar on the hours front, as I mentioned, for SQE1. And this is £2,300. But alternatively, if you are looking to study, and sometimes finances can continue to be a challenge when studying postgraduate level, we have an LLM in legal practice. Now, again, this includes our SQE preparation modules. So the course of the LLM, you have 3 set modules, and then you have 3 elective modules that you can choose on top. So our 3 set modules are SQE1 preparation, SQE2 preparation, and then a capstone project, which is a study project you do throughout the entirety of your program. And then you can choose modules from our transactional and legal business skills modules. So if there are any areas of law that you would like to delve into a little further and maybe start to specialize in, that's your opportunity to do that. And you can do that on our LLM. Our LLM is either 1 year full-time or 2 year part-time. Again, very similar with the 20 to 40 week hours, full-time to 20 study. If you were looking at a full year, full 1 year, you'd be looking at up to 35, 40 hours study. If you're looking at 2 year part-time, you're looking at more 20 hours study a week as a guide. It's £6,900. But what's really great about this, as Giles mentioned, we hold degree awarding powers. This is a full postgraduate master's program. Therefore, you would be entitled to postgraduate funding through any of the nations of Student Finance England, Northern Ireland or Wales. Now, they each differ in what they offer, but for those who are studying in England or based in England, you'd be entitled to the full fee of, I think the loan is £11,888, and that would more than cover the fee for our program. But what that also does, that then covers the fee for your SRA fees as well. So you're able to sit and get a full postgraduate master's, study for the SQE, and also then afford the SQE exams as you go through. So it becomes a really affordable way for you to be able to study for a postgraduate master's, but also continue your journey to qualify as a solicitor through the SQE as well. So we offer quite a variety of courses, all geared towards the SQE, but with a very clear linear journey as well. So I hope that offers a lot more sense on the programs that we offer. So to move on, why should you choose us? Let's say why we think we're really brilliant on what we offer. So we believe we offer one of the highest levels of one-to-one access with practitioners on the market. So if you're on a full-time program with us, you will have weekly tutor and supervisor sessions. So these supervisor sessions are with the subject matter experts, and then you'll also have a personal tutor who you'll catch up with weekly. This could be the same person or somebody different that provides pastoral support, so making sure you're doing okay as you go through your studies. Studying at home can be different to studying in a classroom. So what we want to make sure we do is make sure that you have the right study program, you're revising in the right way, and you're finding it easy getting through the program. And if not, we're providing the support that you need to get through that. We have a very flexible learning design and approach, and especially for a working professional. So if you did want to graduate and go into the world of working and earn some money before you try to commit or want to commit to pursuing the SQE, we offer very flexible programs, as I mentioned, with our different study modes, but also we have our town halls, surgeries, and the supervisor sessions that I've mentioned. So the town hall is very similar to what would be a lecture at university, very large. It's a full cohort. It's led by our program leaders, and these are opportunities for our program leaders to provide you with information that you need around upcoming assessments, the structure of the course, and what things might be changing. And we also offer surgeries. These are slightly smaller. These are in specific areas of law and will be led by a subject matter expert or one of our supervisors. And again, then this is an opportunity for you to discuss the area of law that you're currently studying and learning. So there's very flexible ways. We also have, so we've looked at SQE1, we have over 2,000 multiple choice questions on our online learning platform, Canvas. So your study can be done at any point of the week. So for example, in SQE1 module, you'll have set points of the week you need to submit study. However, the build up to this study and the effort you put into this study to submit, you can do at any time of the week, as long as you then submit it by that point. So it's very flexible for you as an individual to achieve what you want, both personally and professionally. We have practice assessments that closely replicate SQE. Now, this is both in MCQs and in SQE2 style assessments. So this could be written or the oral exams that you'll take. We also do an SQE ready review at the end of SQE1 for every student in the booking window. So what we do at the end of the course is we'll sit down with you and you'll get a very in-depth analysis with your tutor or your supervisor, looking at how you've done through the course, through your assessments. And if we feel that you're ready, we will say we think you should go forward and do the exam. If we don't feel you're ready, we will be honest and say we think you should wait for the next window. You'll have continued access to our online learning platform and all of the activities, videos, podcasts, MCQs, and you'll be able to really refine the work that you've already done to give yourself the best opportunity. Because for us, it's about you getting it done first time and being able to achieve it in the best way possible. We have very competitively priced courses, as you have seen, but we also have very clear expectations of student engagement. We want our students to engage with our supervisors as much as possible. These are people practicing in industry and have the knowledge of today, and these are the best people that you can learn and work from. To quickly just cover the courses we have upcoming, these are very similar structures all year round, so you can get a nice understanding of what courses we offer. We have 13-week programs starting in September 23 for both SQE1 and LLM. But we also have Graduate Foundation in Law starting in February and October, and a 40-week starting in October as well. So we have lots of opportunity for you to sign up to courses. That's not a limited list. There's much more dates on our website that you can find on our course calendar where we have courses starting. But as current undergraduate students, where you would graduate in July or in August, a September or an August start date might be best for you. I've already mentioned, obviously, what funding you can get through Student Finance England, Wales and Northern Ireland. As I said, it does differ for Student Finance Wales or Student Finance Northern Ireland. So I would check to see what you're entitled to. But there is loan opportunity out there if you study our LLM. All applications go through our website. We have minimum criteria from 2023 of a 2.2. We will look to consider applications lower than a 2.2. So those with a third, but we would require you to have an interview with a member from our academic team. That's not to kind of put you on the spot and see what your knowledge is. It's much more around understanding, is the course right for you? Do you feel you can achieve what our course offers? So again, we make sure we give you the best opportunity to achieve. If English isn't your first language, we look to have, or we look for you to have an English language qualification equivalent of the IELTS 6.5 with a minimum of 6 overall. And like I said, all applications go through our website. A couple of things that you can do if you want to find out more. We take Calendly appointments. So if you want to book a Calendly appointment, which is a Zoom call or phone call with a member of the recruitment team, either myself or my colleague Layla, and have a 20-minute, half-hour conversation with us to answer more questions, we're more than happy to do that. We also have a LinkedIn Information SQE group. LinkedIn is becoming massive now, especially in the law of profession of law. So we'd really recommend you join our SQE study group or our information group, and you can find that through that QR code. We also have continued upcoming events. So we're going to do on Thursday, the 1st of December, a much more in-depth look at our SQE courses and what do our SQE courses do to support students studying towards those final exams. If you have any questions, please do drop them in. We haven't had any come through. But Giles, I did want to ask you some questions, if that is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Matt.
We've both been attending quite a few undergraduate law fairs of late.
Yep.
Yeah, you've been to Southampton, I've been to Reading, been to Oxford, we've been to Bath, we've been all over the place. Are there any kind of themes that you've seen speaking to undergraduate students at the moment when it comes to the SQE?
I think I've probably noticed 2 or 3 main themes coming through, Matt. I think it's, first of all, in terms of thinking about a legal career, I think students are weighing up very carefully. Certainly the second and third years we've seen, because if you're a first year, you're going to be doing the SQE anyway. The second and third year is about the LPCs. And whereas last year, a lot of students were saying, well, I'm going to do the LPC because that's the route I've been told about and know. I think there's a lot more focus now. Some students are saying, well, qualifying work experience actually appears a lot more flexible. And I could actually do some work, see if legal practice is for me, earn some money, and then the firm, if I ask them, or even if I go to another firm, would then sponsor me through. So I think the one thing I'm noticing is more students thinking about the flexibility of the route. I think the second thing I'm noting is this approach to cost. I think a lot of students are looking at, and quite rightly, you should look across all providers to see which is right for you. But they are increasingly asking questions about, why am I paying that amount of money for a course when other providers are providing great value courses, but at less cost? And I think that's a question to ask all providers is, if I'm paying this amount of money, what is the study style? How much one-to-one supervision and support am I getting? Am I getting a course that's been written for this new thing? Because the difficulty with some providers, I suspect, is they're still teaching LPC, and it's sometimes easier to teach an LPC-like course for SQE, whereas it's a totally different syllabus. And the SQE is preparing you for day one of practice. It's not preparing you for an LPC day one of a training contract. So that's the second theme. I suppose the third theme, it's more that actually law firms are still looking for those transferable skills. So, if you've done a law degree or a non-law degree, you have that ability to communicate, to write, to work in teams. Don't miss that fact that when you talk to law fairs, firms at law fairs, and we've seen them in action at the ones we've been at, they all want you to be an individual who can have a conversation, is interested in them, is able to talk to them about what they do. So SQE is part of it, but a lot of students are saying, or understanding, it's still about them and their own development, personal development. I suppose what SQE and QWE do is give you a bit more flexibility about the type of career you want. So for me, Matt, those are the two or three things that I'm sort of hearing. I know you and I are on the road next week, aren't we? We're off to Kiel.
We are.
Do some other law fairs as well. So I think it's a question of, if you are going to a law fair, as Matt says, take your time to prepare, take your time to think about who you're going to speak to. And remember, no one's judging you. You're not meant to have all the answers. What you are doing is asking questions, and law firms are really keen to engage with you. And if you know a little bit about SQE and what lies ahead, that does help, because then you can ask them a question about, what do you think about me doing SQE? How will you support me? I suppose the point to make is there is no longer, as far as I can see at the fairs I've been at, any differentiation between LPC being better or SQE being better than the other. They are different routes, and firms are realists. They understand that the SQE is going to be the route for them, and they're preparing for it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think one of the notes I've taken away from the fairs I've attended so far is the surprise at the flexibility and how much easier the SQE could be to complete.
Yes.
When I spoke to somebody yesterday and we discussed that, and she had that reaction, one thing that I was positively challenged on, which I really enjoyed, was about us, and us being an online provider.
Yes.
And a lot of undergraduates of the last couple of years have obviously had challenges with COVID and study. And she was very keen to hear from me why us being online is a good thing. And I think for students to hear that from yourself, Giles, would be great.
I think the answer is simple. I think the COVID was a dreadful time. And many law schools, my old law school at Roehampton included, had to very quickly change from face-to-face classes with materials that were designed for seminars and lectures and workshops to be delivered in a physical space, to put them online. And what they did in a hurry was to put things on management systems like Moodle or Blackboard and just say, here's lots of material, go and read it. And, everyone did their best. And it was a dreadful, dreadful time. However, that wasn't done with any planning or design. It was simply dumped into a learning space and students. And then connectivity. Universities weren't set up to have lots of people dialing into a system at the same time. The difference with us is we've designed this from the start with a learning management system, Canvas, which is really robust. It's been used for 50 years. It's used across all universities across the world, let alone in the UK. And we designed the materials for online delivery. So we designed them with the ability to move in and out of the materials, do activities, do Zoom and face-to-face like you and I are doing now, to make it a really interactive experience. So while we call it various things, don't we? We call it virtual learning. It's anything but virtual. It's actually really, it's designed to be engaging, designed to have you, allow you to learn, as you say, with the flexibility of doing it when you want during the week, but when you're doing it, having that really interesting experience, which is by no means remote. And I think the other thing that you made earlier is that we sort of like to speak to our students. So you'll see a supervisor, you'll go to 2 or 3 subject surgeries, you'll go to a town hall, the program leader, you'll probably form a WhatsApp group with your cohort that we won't be a part of. We'll have discussion boards as well. It's very much community. And that's what we're building. So I think my answer to that student, and it's a great question, isn't it, is why is that rubbish I had for 2 years? Why are you different? Well, the fact is we've designed to deliver online and we're designed for the SQE. So those are 2 important reasons why we hope, and the feedback we've had is positive, that it's a really good learning experience for our learning community.
Definitely. I think we are quickly running out of time. And so the last thing I'd love to finish on, Giles, is you did a fantastic little slide on obviously career steps for graduate and non-law grad students. I think if you could finish with any kind of 2 pieces of advice for a law student and a non-law student getting into the SQE or getting into the profession, what would it be?
I think for the law student, remember everything you've done on your course builds up your CV. So don't think you have to go off and do fantastic extracurricular activities. Don't think you have to have gone to a foreign country or done some exotic sport or done lots of legal work. Actually, what law firms are looking for is your potential. So have you got that experience of working in a team? Have you got that experience of being a good communicator? Have you got that experience of being on time and managing your own time? And those examples from law school or from the societies you're a member of or from that job you do to pay your way through, those are all really, really important. So make sure that you actually focus on those and make sure you explain them very clearly as giving you those transferable skills. I suppose that's what I'd say to the person who's worrying and saying, well, I haven't got a glittering CV. It's about your personal journey and what your ability to be self-critical and to understand what skills you have is really important for firms. I think that's for the law student. I think for the non-law student, as I was a law student, I think it's about discovering, is this a profession you want to go into? I was lucky. I found it was, but I'd had a couple of false starts. So if it's something that you look at and think, that's really interesting. And if you're nosy, you like to know what the ending is. Because when you talk to clients, it's all about unfinished stories. And what you're trying to do is find solutions. And you meet some really interesting people. Do you like people? So, as a non-law grad, if you're thinking, is law for me? Don't think about dry study. Think about, am I nosy? Am I curious? Do I like people? If you do, those 3 things probably mean it's going to be a job for you. And remember, the good thing about being a non-law student is you've done something else. So for law firms, you've got hinterland. And that means you've got something else, whether it's a degree in engineering or art or English, or whatever it is. You've got a set of skills already, those graduate skills. And I remember a lot of law firms, when they recruit and organizations, they look as much for those non-lawyers to give them that variety of experience and background and maturity, because sometimes you're a little bit older, as well as those lawyers who've come through the law degree.
Amazing. Some fantastic advice there that I hope everybody takes away and runs with.
Well, thank you.
We shall leave it there today. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. What we'll do post this, we will send out the presentation slides. We'll send out a recording of this webinar so you can get back to it if you want to get back and listen to what Giles has said. And also, we just hope you've really enjoyed it. If you want to get in contact with us more, you can find contact details on our website. And we're more than happy to answer any questions. Get in contact with your law society. We're starting to build up a fantastic network of law societies. So we may work with your law society already. We may see you sometime soon. So thank you for attending. We hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you.